by the time 1987 arrived, I was on my second research grant related to reflective practice and how it might apply to people who were learning to teach. And I had an opportunity to speak at the University of Arizona about reflective practice and my interest in it. And the greatest response that I got at Arizona came from 4 people who were all graduate students at the time. You may know them as because they've written on numerous occasions as the Arizona Four: Stephanie Pinniger, Mary Lynn Hamilton, Karen Guilfoyle, and Peggy Placier. Several things had happened. We stayed in contact. We had a very exciting first meeting, and email had arrived or was beginning to arrive, and we stayed in contact. Met at meetings of AERA. We put together a symposium at AERA in 1992 in San Francisco, and so the 5 of us presented our own experiences, trying to take a closer look at what was happening in our teacher education classrooms. Our discussant was Fred Korthagen, whom I'd had the good fortune to meet at a conference in 1987 in England. And again, we had stayed in contact and found many common interests in teacher education. At the small room at AERA for that 1992 symposium was packed, and there were some very interesting comments from the audience at the end of the symposium. And one person in the back of the room, by the name of Beth Ann Herman, put her hand up and said, we should explore developing a special interest group around work like this, that many other teacher educators would probably be interested in it. Another moment of serendipity, that also happened to be the event where I first met John Loughran, whom many of you will know for his extensive writing in the area of self-study. 2 years later, in 1993, the SIG was launched at the AERA meeting in Atlanta, and immediately had a subscription of, I think, over 300 members. And to this day, the SSTEP SIG has remained one of the larger special interest groups within AERA. 8 or 9 of my colleagues and our new dean here at Queen's were eager to organize and be involved in a conference about self-study at Herstmonceux Castle, and the first conference did happen in July of 1996. Here's a photograph of Herstmonceux Castle. This is the image that one sees on first arriving at the castle, and you can see why people might be attracted to a location such as this. I call it the best conference venue for a group of 100 people anywhere on the planet. Many of you will be aware, and this was largely through the incredible leadership that John offered, and Mary Lynn Hamilton, Vicki Lebowski, and I were editors of individual sections, but the 2-volume International Handbook of Self-Study of Teaching and Teacher Education Practices in 2004 certainly gave the enterprise of self-study a larger recognition. And again, through the hard work that John put in communicating with potential publishers, the journal Studying Teacher Education, a journal of self-study of teacher education practices, was launched in 2005. John and I were the initial co-editors, and I'm now very pleased to be working with Mandy Berry as a co-editor, and the journal has just published the first issue of its 11th year.
I have the honour now of introducing Clare Kosnik, who's a professor at the Ontario Institute for Studies of Education at the University of Toronto. She's currently the associate editor of the journal Studying Teacher Education, and she's the past chair of the SSTEP SIG at AERA.
Combining traditional research and self-study research. Okay, I do not see the two as in opposition. I see them as working beautifully together. And I'm going to give you 3 examples from my own experiences of how self-study informed more traditional forms of research. One of the issues with grounded theory is you're investigating, as Strauss said, but you have to know what questions to ask. And when you were exploring, you don't necessarily know the questions to ask. And this is where self-study has helped me. Because I quickly realized what I did as a classroom teacher didn't work in higher education. So Arthur Cole sort of planted that seed about starting to study your own practice. And since I couldn't really find a lot of books other than the one by Cochrane and Lytle, what to do, I thought, all right, I'll study myself. So I looked at critical incidents over a course of a year. I looked at what were my priorities as a classroom teacher and what are my priorities now as a teacher educator. And I thought, well, this is sort of interesting. I learned a tremendous amount, but I'm not really that interesting. I needed more than just me. So I decided that I needed to look at other teacher educators. So I was super, super lucky to get a grant to study 28 literacy, English, language arts, depending what country you're in, teacher educators, those who are preparing student teachers to teach literacy, language arts, English. Then I had to develop the interview questions. And I had funding to do 3 interviews. So the first interview was on their background experiences, the second was on their pedagogy, and the third was on use of digital technology. And when we were developing the 3 parts of the study, you could see each part linked back to a self-study I had done. So my smaller studies of teacher educators, my own self-studies, completely informed this large-scale study of literacy teacher educators. We've already had a number of journal articles published in prestigious journals. And someone said, how do you make the case for self-study and tenure and promotion? Well, I think this is a perfect example that you use your self-study to inform your larger research. 3 years ago, I decided, okay, I'm going to do this. This is going to be my focus. I am going to integrate digital technology into my literacy methods courses. And I thought, oh, perfect opportunity to do a self-study. I can't tell you how glad I am. So I did the self-study with my TA, Lydia Mena, and we taught together for years, so it was sort of like co-teaching. We had a critical friend, Sean Bullock, who's like the expert on digital technology. So we did this over 3 years. The first year I discovered we integrated about 34 different things into the courses, so we're feeling pretty proud of ourselves. But if it hadn't been for self-study, I would have just been quite satisfied with myself and proud. But through the analysis, I discovered that I really hadn't done anything new. I had only layered digital technology onto an existing course. I had replaced the overhead projector with fancy PowerPoints or websites. I had not really looked at supporting student teachers' learning. In my study of 28 literacy teacher educators, in the first interview, we asked folks, are there any gaps in your knowledge? Because again, I know about big gaps in my knowledge, and so many people said technology. So in the third interview, we had a whole section on digital technology, the interviews. But my self-study informed the questions I was going to ask.